This is the first lecture burst podcast for Chapter 10, Aggression. And I'm going to move through these slides relatively quickly. There's a few in here that don't really apply because we're not in class. But I'm going to try to stop on some that have videos just to tell you about the video and then direct you to where to find that video on Play-Doh so that if you were doing these lecture slides, you could kind of follow along with the videos as well on Play-Doh. So I'm open to the first slide here. There we go. Usually I have students start out by watching America the Rude, and I have included this in the Play-Doh videos for the week so that you can watch it. It's also attached to your discussion for this week. So you're going to be watching the video, and because our pro-social project is completed this week, I need to have something for you guys for this week and next week for discussion. So I figured this would be good. You're just going to be commenting on a few things from the video. So you're going to want to go into Play-Doh and take a look at that discussion board where you're going to be posting to. But it's based on this video called America the Rude. And it really tackles the issue of sort of the downgrading or the erosion, I guess you could say, of our decorum in the U.S. You know, how we handle delicate situations, how we handle people, how we relate to people, what's our attitude, how do we respect authority, or do we? So a little bit of mimicking from the Milgram study there with authority figures and things like that. Where does road rage play a role in our aggression? And so all of this is sort of related to the last chapter, pro-social behavior, because it's really talking about the decline in pro-social behavior and the incline in just people being apathetic, not really caring or being too busy to care about the feelings of other people, and really pushing the envelope of what socially acceptable behavior is. And as a society, our standards have gone way down in terms of what is socially acceptable behavior towards other people. So definitely take a look at that. It's tied to your discussion board. We consider what the nature is of aggression. It's any behavior that intends to harm another person. And as you're going to see through some of the examples, it can be verbal or physical. Sometimes it comes from a place of needing to release frustration or to address conflict that we're having interpersonally with others. But we can do this in a number of ways. It can be emotional or hostile aggression, which the goal here is suffering for the victim. Like, I want to do something that's going to hurt this person because I'm upset, I'm mad, or they hurt me and I want revenge. And so the goal is suffering for the victim. Whereas instrumental aggression, the goal is non-injurious, which is like you might not want to hurt anybody, but the acts serve as a different purpose. So, for instance, armed robbery is a form of instrumental aggression. The goal isn't really for the person who's committing the theft to really kill anybody. I don't think that's the goal. The goal is to obtain money, but they might end up harming somebody. They might end up shooting someone or killing somebody if they get scared, if they get pinned in a corner, if the person doesn't cooperate. Who knows, right? But the goal here is not to harm intentionally with hostile aggression another person. The goal is to get the money, and they're going to do whatever it takes, whatever means it takes to get that money. So the different categories of aggressive behavior can be several. We have direct acts of aggression, which are clearly derived from an aggressor aimed at a victim. We have indirect acts where it's not maybe as clear who the aggressor is, or maybe the victim is unclear. And we'll show some examples of that in a minute. And then the expressive view of aggression, where aggression is really just used as a means to get out someone's anger, reduce the stress that they're feeling, and combat those angry emotions. It might even be seen as a defense mechanism, right? And we're going to come back to that. There's a video I posted on Play-Doh that deals with the types of aggression. So I want you to look at that. It includes these and gives some really great examples from popular media and stuff. It's just a short video. So take a look at that. So here's your categories, and I've broken it up by direct and indirect acts that can be either hostile or instrumental, right? So an example of a direct hostile act would be an angry driver starts a fist fight with another driver who's been tailgating him. Okay, it's clear who the aggressor is and who the victim is, and it's an act to get out emotions and release those emotions, and it's hostile. The intent is to harm the other person. Whereas an indirect act, still hostile, still emotional in content, an indirect act might be under the cover of night. An irritated tenant deflates the tires on the landlord's car. The landlord's going to wake up and not really know who the aggressor was. They're going to find their car impaired, right? And obviously that's no fun. And so the person's letting out steam, but in an indirect way. So they're letting out those emotions. They're getting out that hostile aggression, but in an indirect way. Instrumentally, a direct mode would be like the bank robber that we just talked about. An indirect mode of instrumental aggression would be a woman interested in dating a man asks her sister to tell the man a vicious rumor about his current girlfriend, right? So an indirect way of harming that girl's reputation so that the object is not to really harm the other person, but the object is to get the man. So I'm going to hurt this other person who's really just kind of in the way, but my intent is really because I want to be with this person. So it's instrumental, indirect aggression. So these can be a combination, right? We can have physical, direct aggression like punching, verbal direct aggression, which is name calling, so it can be verbal or physical. Indirect aggression could be like a physical indirect aggression could be refusing to shake hands, refusing to, touch you or get close to you. Withholding love might be an indirect physical aggression, like a parent might do from a child. Never good, right? Even when a child does something wrong, you should never withhold your love, because then you're teaching a child that your love is contingent on their behavior. It should be, I'm going to love you no matter what, even if I'm upset with you at something you did. Spreading a rumor would be a verbal indirect aggression, as we saw already. Situations obviously can play a role in aggression, so those come into play. Research has looked at things like temperature. If it's too hot, we tend to get aggressive. Too crowded areas promote aggression. Alcohol, because our inhibitions are down, causes people to do dumb things. The more available guns are, people might decide to use those for aggression. And then frustration, and we're going to come back to this with the frustration-aggression hypothesis, which is one of the primary hypotheses as to why we aggress. So we'll come back and look at that a little bit later. I've posted a video too that covers sort of the bases for aggression: biological, psychological, and sociocultural. I posted that on Play-Doh, so take a look at that. I believe this is the Khan Academy video I posted, but it's going to help you to understand that aggression comes from different places, and all of these factors play a role. Biology plays a role in how aggressive we are, so does our psychology, and so does our culture, and sociocultural elements play a role in maybe how that aggression is taken out, what's the outlet for it, what is socially acceptable, what isn't in a given environment. So let's just get into the biological factors for this podcast. Hopefully we can finish through with those. So one key thing that we look at is just, the idea that some tendencies we have, and those can be aggressive tendencies, are inherited or pre-programmed in us. This comes largely from Konrad Lorenz, who said that we sort of have a fighting instinct, right? We have this instinctual drive to fight off and fend off enemies or someone that's trying to hurt us or attack us. It's a mode of survival. So this is very much evolutionary perspective, right? And mating and driving off potential rivals helps ensure that our genetic line is continued and that we reproduce and we can go on. So status and position play a role here, right? Obviously, alpha males have the more dominant features in a group, in a society, and so they're going to have that higher status. They can get away with a lot more, and also those lower on the totem pole, the more submissive, are going to take their cues from the alpha males and from those higher in the status position, and so it feeds back into culturally, what kind of culture do you create? Do you create a culture where, it is driven by aggressive tendencies, or where aggressive tendencies are frowned upon and that's not favored, and so more passivity and peace is favored, and that can definitely be the case in different baboon troops. We see that the hierarchy and how the dominant monkeys act, it gives cues off to the ones lower on the status line of how they should in turn act, right? Instinct and evolution. So instinct theory, this comes from Konrad Lorenz, is that aggression is an innate and inevitable occurrence. And we talk a little bit about Freud every now and then, but Freud said we have a death instinct. It comes from like the id, which is always driving us to quell sort of these underlying unconscious urges and desires that we have, but it promotes what's called a death instinct, is that when we act out on our id, we could act in ways that are socially unacceptable, and we may be rejected in society. In fact, we may be killed, depending upon the situation. So aggression is related to survival, and the instinct gets stronger over time. A couple problems with this that we're going to look at is, why is aggression different then in different cultures? If instinct theory is true and this is evolutionary, it should be shown in everyone all over, but it's not. It's very different depending upon the culture you live in. So that says that culture plays a huge role. And it doesn't account for males' aggression towards females, right? It doesn't make sense from an evolutionary perspective that a male would aggress on a female. Female is one that a male should protect, right? A female is who delivers the offspring in the culture. Female is the one that's going to carry that genetic line. So why would you want to hurt that female or damage the possibility of that genetic line being interrupted in any way? So the fact that there's so much male physical abuse towards females doesn't really account for that with this theory. It kind of breaks down a little bit with evolutionary theory, so it doesn't explain all the factors there. We're going to come back to that. Biochemical influences, definitely a possibility. Alcohol, right? I say need we say more. Hormones, so testosterone levels are often higher in those who commit violent crimes. We're going to come back to this. And affects mostly men, but can also impact women, but men obviously have higher testosterone levels. Even in our neurotransmitters, we see low levels of serotonin found in violent-prone children and adults. So those who are more aggressive and prone to violence also are showing low levels of serotonin. Serotonin's the happy drug, the drug that makes you feel good and great. And so we're not seeing a lot of that. So there's something there. So this gives possible avenues for treating aggression and how can we attack it. So Bad Girls talks a little bit about the rise in female aggression. So we're going to, obviously this is the goal of the homework, is to look at this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But we look at instances where there's been roid rage, right? So not road rage, but roid rage from steroids. This is why they're banned in athletics. And this was the story of Chris Benoit, who killed his family and subsequently killed himself in a roid rage. He had been taking steroids. He was normally a very calm, mild-mannered man, given his size, but he did this, atrocious act because he was under the influence of steroids, which increased his testosterone. And so that gives a lot of credit to just how powerful a chemical like testosterone hormone can be in its role in this.